Hey there, hey everyone. So welcome to my podcast, Gig Stuff. Gig Stuff is a podcast which I have for a very long time, but I have never posted anything. I just create the podcast and never post anything. So I have decided to actually give it a little bit more attention. Gig stuff, the idea is to talk about gig stuff, like stuff that's just geek-like, which is like um, science, sci-fi, and the moves and so on. That's something that just geek likes. We geek like people that like science and so on. You tend to like this kind of movie, and I love it. I love movie that talks about the sci-fi and so on. I even published a book a couple of years ago. I think more than 1 year ago, but I didn't give enough attention to the book. I felt now I feel that I should have given more attention to the book because it's a very nice book which I'm very proud to have written, but I didn't talk too much about the book. I published several blog posts, but I have never actually talked. I have never really discussed the book as I think should be discussed. I have already published a first version of this episode. I'd like to invite you to get to know my book on Amazon, Google Play. Just buy a copy of my book so you can support my work. There are several chapters about what we are going to discuss today. We don't have in the book. It's an extension. So in the book I have Matrix, I have RoboCop, I have Back to the Future. So I have all this. The idea is quite simple. The idea of AI by Sci-Fi, which is a book on Amazon and Google Play. The idea is that what can you learn about the artificial intelligence and what we can learn from those movies, such as I have compared RoboCop, the three version that was produced on the 80s, and I have as well compared to the latest version of RoboCop, which was a kind of reboot. Then I have compared how things change, such as now China is the center of technology of artificial intelligence. It's no longer Japan or even United States. Now it's more like China. So the challenge of the books like this is to share, because I do have a PhD. Most of my work was done in artificial intelligence, especially on my undergraduation. And I feel that I should maybe give a little bit of my attention. I have been talking about a lot about atheism. I'm an atheist and about religion, Christianity, Jesus, and so on. But I thought I should explore more my own background, which is artificial intelligence, mathematical model, bioinformatics, and so on. So on this episode, we are going to play a little bit with the idea of Knight Rider, which Knight Rider is a series that was produced in the 80s. It's a very simple but very interesting, I think, series. I think it's about a car, a supercar, super smart car, can talk, can interact with human, and a human that goes around solving crime and so on. I think at the beginning the movie may sound a little bit dumb, a little bit meaningless, but if you really pay attention, it was nice. If you compare what was around on the time when the movie was produced, if you compare the dream about artificial intelligence, I think like any AI movie, like Back to the Future, if you see all the AI movies, they tend not to get 100% right in the future, but they tend to go very deep. For instance, which we are going to discuss more during the conversation that I'm going to do with artificial intelligence. Uh, Basically, I gave the artificial intelligence my article, which was about the Knight Rider, and he asked it to discuss it. Then I have already published for you the version which artificial intelligence is talking to my is talking about, called deep dive, which is talking about my story on Medium. I have just launched this Geek Stuff, which is a Medium publication, which you are invited to publish as well. Medium has this nice stuff that anyone can publish, and you can submit your publication to someone, like a publication might called Geek Stuff. So you don't have to submit, but The nice stuff about submitting to a publication is that you have your story organized in a kind of a page which called Geek Stuff, which inside Medium. You still have control of your publication. You can like remove your publication anytime you want. That's nice stuff. The publication is more a way to organize several stories that share something in common. So in this case, what they have in common is geek stuff. What geek like stories? It's a geek stuff is a very generic term. So I think the publication has an opportunity to accept publication story from basically anyone. So let's start. So basically, let me explain how it's going to be, how you are going to do. I'm going to let artificial intelligence to talk. Then I'm going to talk back. I'm going to discuss it if artificial intelligence my story. I have already done that several times. It's a very nice experience. Again, you have you have the conversation without me, just with artificial intelligence doing a deep dive inside my story on Medium, on the publication geek stuff. And again, I invite you to get to know my book on Amazon. It's called AI by Sci Fi. So basically, you watch Netflix and you learn about artificial intelligence. So let's start.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into some interesting sources and pull out the key ideas for you.
Yep, that's the plan.
And today, well, our mission is kind of sparked by a couple of things. First, there's this new Medium publication launching Geek Stuff Podcast. Sounds pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Geek stuff is always good.
Exactly. And it also ties into the ideas in the book AI by Sci Fi by Jorge Guerra Pires.
Right. AI by Sci Fi. Good stuff there.
So our focus today is looking at how science fiction.
Oh, wait. Someone wants to join. Hey, go for it.
Hey guys, hey everyone. I'm the author of the story. I'm the author of the book. Just let you know that I'm here. As I explained previously as I have explained previously on the introduction of the podcast. I'm going to discuss with you my story. They already have a version of you two talking about my story, which was a very nice discussion. But now you are going to talk, interact with my story. I'm very glad that I have this opportunity to talk back to you, to actually discuss with you this story about the Knight Rider, which is for my book AI by Sci Fi. So that's all. Hey guys, everyone, just let you know that I'm here. I'm just let you know that I'm here. I'm the author of the book. I'm the author of the story. Just know that I'm going to join the discussion.
Well, hello there. It's fantastic to have you with us.
Wow, the author himself. That's absolutely brilliant. We're really excited you're here to join the discussion.
It adds a whole new dimension knowing you're listening in and ready to jump in. We're just setting the stage by looking at how sci-fi, like Knight Rider, explored some really interesting ideas about AI.
Yeah, we were just getting into how even a seemingly simple show from the early 80s had some pretty deep things to say about humans and machines getting along.
And what's fascinating, as the article we were referencing points out, is that this was before Silicon Valley became the tech hub it is today. The computers they had on screen were quite basic compared to what we have now.
Totally.
Hey, yeah, what's up?
Yes, I think that was a very, I would say, a very interesting part on the first episode, in the beginning of the series, Knight Rider. They actually start on Silicon Valley. There was a case in someone that was selling, I think, illegal chips and so on. The funny part is that Silicon Valley wasn't what is today. It's a kind of reference to Silicon Valley, which wasn't the center of technology. Today, Google, all this technology, OpenAI, everything Silicon Valley. On the time that Knight Rider was created, Silicon Valley wasn't this kind of center of technology that we have today.
That's a fantastic point you bring up. It's easy to forget how different the tech landscape was back then.
Absolutely. The article even touches on that, mentioning how the show predates the Silicon Valley we know today.
What's interesting is that even with those huge, clunky machines, as the article describes them, the show still managed to envision such advanced AI.
Yeah, the computers in the show might have looked simple, but the ideas they represented were really Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Yes, that's I think, a curious part about the old movies, such as Star Trek, for example. They didn't have too much effect. sometimes I love it when I see a reboot or a remake of an old tech, a sci-fi movie, so on, because there's this old technology, so on. But sometimes what happened with Star Trek, what happened if Knight Rider, they tend to lose this kind of philosophy. They tend to focus too much on the tech, on the side, on the effect, on the special effect, which is a very interesting part, but they tend to lose the technology and so on. I mean, sorry, they tend to lose the philosophy, all the science that generate those series they used to have. Like I think that's a common pattern that can find in reboot and remake nowadays.
That's a really insightful observation. It hits on something the article also brings up about the remakes.
Absolutely, you're right. That focus can definitely shift. The article talks about how the 2008 Knight Rider reboot seemed to prioritize action over those deeper questions.
What's fascinating here is that the original show, despite its 80s action vibe, really did explore that philosophy.
Oh, back to our listener. What's up?
One point that you guys just brought, which I think interesting to mention, is because the reboot that was created recently. One thing about reboot, I didn't see all the series yet. I'm still watching the reboot, but I felt that was missing this kind of futuristic view, like what AI is gonna be in the future. I mean, I don't think that AI is finished. I don't think that we don't have a way to imagine AI. I think the same way that the original Knight Rider was able to imagine a future of AI. It didn't get it right all the time. For example, the idea of the self-driving car. You have Elon Musk if face all the difficulty of self-driving car. KITT, which was the intelligent car, was able to do very complex maneuver, was able to do very complex movement. He was able to drive as good or even better than humans. But in this case of the self-driving car, we are
That's a really interesting point about the reboot's vision of the future.
Yeah, you're wondering if it captured that same sense of potential that the original had?
And it brings up a key question. What exactly is our modern vision of AI in fiction?
The article touches on this, noting that maybe we've hit a conceptual ceiling.
What's fascinating here is that the original Knight Rider, even with its limitations, sparked so much imagination.
Right, KITT's abilities, even if not perfectly accurate predictions, were still thought-provoking.
And that interplay between Michael's intuition and KTT's logic, as the article points out with the trust me line.
It makes you wonder if the focus in the reboot shifted too much away from that relationship.
The article does suggest that some modern sci-fi might be prioritizing spectacle over substance.
And it even draws parallels to Star Trek, noting a similar trend in some of the newer series.
But the article also offers a counterpoint with the 2014 RoboCop reboot.
That one, it says, did try to update the core themes in a relevant way.
Oh, go for it.
The Robocop case was, as I mentioned before, you can find that on my book, AI Sci-Fi. My book's available on Google Play, Amazon. In the case of Robocop, I actually used on my book, AI by Sci-Fi. And it's a very interesting case because, for example, if you see Robocop from the 80s, Japan was the center of technology. Now it's not Japan anymore. Now it's USA and China, especially China, which is, in this case of Robocop, was built in China on the new version, the reboot. So everything was happening in China. That's a very interesting point because you see a shift between Japan as a center of technology in the Robocop of the 80s. China was a center of technology, of innovation, so on. Now in the new Robocop, so Robocop was able to catch very well this shift between technology. He was even able to imagine a very complex philosophical question, which I have the feeling that Knight Rider, the new version, the reboot, was unable.
That's a really interesting connection you're making about the RoboCop reboot and the shift in technological power.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how those details can reflect real-world changes.
The article does mention that the RoboCop reboot updated the original's themes effectively.
And that idea you brought up about Japan being a tech center in the 80s version versus China in the reboot, that's a great example of how remakes can inadvertently capture our present moment.
What's fascinating here is how even a detail like where a fictional technology originates can speak volumes about global trends.
It really makes you think about who's shaping our visions of the future now.
And as you were saying, that RoboCop reboot did delve into some complex questions, even about algorithmic governance.
Right. It wasn't just about the action, but who's really in control.
Which brings us back to Knight Rider. The article highlights that its core wasn't just the gadgets either,
No, it was about that central question of trust in the technology we create.
and the potential for AI to have its own kind of moral. Yep, go on.
In the case of KITT, which KITT is the software, is the car, is the software behind the super smart car. In the case of KITT, it reminds me a lot of ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a recent trend, was a kind of a boom when it was launched. And in the case of ChatGPT, it's very similar. It can talk back and so on. I was even talking to ChatGPT about KITT, and I compare ChatGPT if KITT ChatGPT was talking back to me and so on. It's very similar as I was talking to, but the difference because KITT actually had a personality. It actually acted as a human. It actually acted as a
That's a really interesting analogy you're drawing with modern AI like ChatGPT.
Absolutely. The ability to converse is definitely a key similarity.
It makes you think about that core appeal of KITT, this intelligent entity you could actually interact with.
But you've hit on a crucial distinction, the element of personality and that almost human-like connection.
Right. The article touches on this, saying KITT had dry wit, caution, moral judgment.
That's what elevated him beyond just a piece of sophisticated software. He felt like a character.
And that's perhaps what some of the more sterile portrayals of AI in remakes might be missing.
As you continue watching the Knight Rider reboot, it will be interesting to see how they handle that aspect, if at all.
Consider if they try to capture that same nuance in the relationship between the driver and the car's AI.
It's definitely a challenge trying to. Oh, yeah.
I think I should stress this point. What I miss so far in the reboot of Knight Rider is because they does not seem to be imagining. I mean, what was nice about those 80s AI sci-fi movies were the imagination about the future. How they were imagining. I didn't see. I was most of them I was not even born. I think Knight Rider was created when I was not even born. So I saw recently as I was older. But still, when you see the movie and you see the future now, they imagined what would happen if technology, if artificial intelligence, in the new version, the reboot, I think they are missing this kind of imagination.
That's a really crucial point you're emphasizing.
Absolutely. And it really resonates with what the article touches on about the lost art of remakes.
What's fascinating here is how those older sci-fi shows, even with simpler technology, really leaned into that imaginative speculation.
Yeah, they weren't just showing us cool gadgets, they were asking what if in a big way.
And as you pointed out, that sense of imagining the future of AI seems to be less prominent in some modern reboots.
It makes you wonder if the focus has shifted.
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, shift a little bit about the how does if you compare technology, for example, there is a scene which I was watching in which the car Peach he jumped into a lake. Two car, a cop car and the kid jump into a lake. You can see clearly from the scene that the scene was recorded using a kind of toy, a kind of it wasn't a special effect, it was a toy. I have as well noticed that several images on the Knight Rider they are repeated several times. Like they reuse the image more than one time. So you can see that even I don't know how much it was available to create the series, but certainly the series was somehow cheap in the same of money because you can see some very bad special effect. I think even from the time and some kind of repetition of the scene. So somehow I think they want to focus on the technology, not
That's a really interesting shift in perspective. You're bringing up the practical limitations of filmmaking technology at the time.
Yeah, it's true. When we look back, especially at shows from the 80s, the special effects can look pretty dated to our modern eyes.
What's fascinating here is that even with those limitations, the core ideas and the storytelling still resonated with audiences.
You can see how they had to be creative with their budget and the technology they had available. That toy car in the lake scene is a perfect example.
And the repeated footage you noticed, that was likely a common cost-saving measure in television production back then.
It really highlights that the success of Knight Rider wasn't necessarily about groundbreaking visual effects. Oh, go for it.
in fact, there is this discussion which I was just here by chance that Hollywood is becoming very expensive. So they need to make sure that whatever they do will be a success. So the new Knight Rider is very close to Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious. I mean, even I think it's clearly a kind of go on, please.
That's a really interesting point you're bringing up about the economics of Hollywood now.
Yeah, the stakes are definitely higher with big budget productions.
What's fascinating here is how that pressure to succeed might influence the kinds of stories that get told and how they're told.
You're suggesting that maybe the focus shifts to more guaranteed formulas, like the action-heavy Fast and Furious style.
It makes you wonder if that leaves less room for the kind of philosophical exploration we saw in the original Knight Rider.
The article we were discussing does touch on.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
One thing as well that I talk on the article is whether it's not the Hollywood that becomes stupid, dumb. It's us, our society. So our society seems not to be willing anymore to have very complex, very plotty, such as the philosophical one. I don't know if whether it's Hollywood because of the very expensive movies or the very high price to create movie, or whether it's our society which is becoming dumber, which is becoming stupid, because they are looking for very simple plot that does not have too much of a philosophy and so on.
That's a really thought-provoking question you're raising about the audience and complexity.
It connects directly to something the article touches on. Studios sell what sells.
Exactly. The piece suggests that if our shows are dumber, maybe it's because we've stopped demanding more.
So it presents that very dilemma. Is it a supply issue from Hollywood or a demand shift from the audience?
It's tough to say definitively, but it's definitely something to consider when looking at remakes.
Perhaps there's a cycle at play where simpler plots become popular, leading to more of the same.
And that might inadvertently discourage more nuanced or philosophical storytelling.
The article does highlight how the original Knight Rider asked hard questions about technology.
And maybe today's mainstream doesn't prioritize those kinds of questions in the same way.
But
Yeah.
For example, let me do a kind of example. Raised by Wolves. Raised by Wolves is a movie about atheists, like society that will be atheists in the future. That's a very interesting and curious philosophical question. But they just had 2 seasons with a very philosophical, interesting show, series, but they didn't do more than 2 seasons. Guys, I think I had an issue here with the AI. Maybe I will have to stop because I had an issue here.
Welcome to the deep dive. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we dig into some interesting sources and pull out the key ideas for you.
yep, that's the plan.
And today, well, our mission is kind of sparked by a couple of things. First, there's this new Medium publication launching Geek Stuff Podcast. Sounds pretty cool.
Oh yeah, geek stuff is always.
Hey guys, so I had an issue with the audio, with the AI. It just had a kind, but anyway, um, I think that was the idea that I wanted to talk about today. Yeah, you have all the audio, if the artificial intelligence talking to each other about my story. And that's my point. My point is that it seems that Hollywood has become dumber, not because maybe they are dumb, because our demand to movies that are thoughtful are losing, such as Raised by Wolves, which I hope to bring in the future, is a very smart about atheism and religion, the future of society without religion. There is as well this very nice series which I was like called Scorpion, which about technology is a kind of geek stuff. Maybe in the future I'm going to talk about Scorpion. I do like Scorpion. There are kind of 5 geniuses that try to solve problems to the American government, which are very smart, I would say. So I think for now, that's all. As I said before, we had a small issue. We had a problem with artificial intelligence, but as you have seen, I have already recorded several episodes which work just fine. I mean, a problem may happen eventually. So see you in the next episode.